Welcome, everyone, to another rambling session with myself and my co hosts, Lee and Geoff.
Heyo.
And at least in this one, I know I'm on camera, so waving makes sense. Every other recording we do, I wave at the damn camera. So this works out better.
Yeah, but you use two hands.
He just waves no matter what. He's just excited.
I'm always excited to be here talking with you guys.
I doubt that.
If I wasn't, I wouldn't do it.
Pretty sure it's part of your contract. You have to do it.
I don't know where you keep getting this contract thing. The only person we've ever given a contract to, we had to fire and bury in a field.
Are you sure about that?
Well, I don't know what you did with the body. I know what I do with my third.
I fed it to the dog that's behind Brett right there.
The Hound of War. Trouble making her appearance.
Mm-hmm. Cue the bark.
We should have recorded that. We should have recorded that so we could add it whenever we wanted to.
Sure, you could if you make some effort.
I was gonna say she pretty much barks on command, anyways, right? So I don't think it's hard to get her to bark.
And we start off rambling. Yay! Show's over. Thanks for coming, everybody. Bye.
Almost
Speak.
like it's the name of the show.
Speak.
Good dog.
Good girl. There you go.
What are we talking about this week, Brett?
Today's episode, as you probably guessed from our clever title, is all about the games we play, what we like about them, what challenges they may have. Hey Lee, why don't you go ahead and take a crack at listing off some of the traditional games, the game types for our viewers, or at least the ones that we'll be covering today.
Well, I know we're working on board games. I know eventually we're going to be talking about video games, but not this episode. Same thing with role-playing games, tabletop. Basically anything that involves a group of people getting around and playing together, though with video games it could be individual play as well.
That's what multiplayer online is for, right?
Absolutely. Like you and I play a lot of War Thunder together, but there's lots of other ones that are single players. So like I'm a huge Grand Theft Auto fan.
Got to have a little excitement in your life, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so basically today, let's start off with board games and see how far we go, because we typically like to shoot for about an hour episode, and this could be multiple episodes or this could be all in one. We'll see how it flies.
Oh, I can do at least 2-3 episodes purely on board games, so I've been collecting them forever.
Good. We'll let you helm the ship then today. Take her away, Lee.
All right. Well, I'll start off with the collection that I started with. My household, I refuse to have Monopoly in the house because it just ends friendships and divides up families. Though I have thought about allowing like junior Monopoly in because the rules are slightly different to make sure that little kids aren't beating the heck out of each other. But yeah, I collect them all. I have games made in the 60s. I've had some games that were made just recently. During COVID, a lot of new games came out, a lot of new styles just before COVID. Cooperative games are really big. I've got the most recent game I bought was Rage Against Dracula, or The Rage of Dracula. It was hard to find too. We went everywhere to get it. It's not the most newest produced game, but it's really good. You have 4 players playing vampire hunters, and you have 1 player playing Dracula. And the whole purpose is to hunt down Dracula and kill him. Meanwhile, he's trying to spread evil influence over Europe. And it's got all the classic players like Van Helsing and Mina and all that kind of stuff. So it's actually a really interesting game. Dracula has all the power at first, and the other characters are trying to gather things together to be able to defeat him in combat. And then it kind of turns into almost like a magic card game against Dracula. So it's got classic board game feel to it, mixed with not collectible cards, but you're gathering cards from a deck to build up your powers. So it's actually got a really good play. I really need to find 4 people that are patient enough to sit down and play because it's a long one.
What do you define as a long one?
3-4 hours.
Geoff, what do you consider a long one?
Months.
Yeah, if it's not like a whole evening, that's not long. That's just standard.
That's a strategic game. The one that we were talking about in one of the other shows Jeff,
We'll get back to
you've
that.
been playing on months. So, but that's just a different type of game as well. Zombicide is another one we play a lot of because that's another cooperative one where you're playing against the rules of the game. We just started Legacy on Betrayal of House on the Hill. I think that's what it is. Betrayal on the House of the Hill. There's a Legacy version of that one that we play with my in-laws. And the really cool thing about that is, and this totally messes me up as a board game player, certain cards, it tells you to destroy the card. You literally rip it to pieces and throw it away. It makes me feel physically ill when we do that because I'm like, but what about later when I want to play the game again? And yeah, it's been really neat. My sister-in-law is whooping our butt at that version.
That sounds like a good marketing plan. If
It
you
is.
destroy a third of the game, you have to buy it again if you want to play.
Yeah, and it's really good too because every time you play through it, it comes up differently. Like if you were to buy the game again, which is pretty smart for an $80-some game, you end up playing it and it just comes out completely different results, including which cards get destroyed. So that's actually really neat game system. Though Zombicide is one of my favorites because there's so many Kickstarters for it and so many different variants.
Oh, there's like everything for Zombicide now.
Yeah. They're coming up with Marvel Zombies as well, which I don't think it's out yet, but that one's got my attention.
I kickstarted that one for like $450.
See, that's like 5 games for me, so yeah, that's harsh. You're gonna have to bring it
I
out.
split it with the kid, but yeah,
Oh,
it's huge.
We'll play it. I'll definitely play that with you, and I promise not to rip any of your cards up.
I think Zombicide is coming out with like a Ghostbusters thing, like character set.
Yeah,
and
because
then
there was
another one also.
There's the 4 or 5 expansions for just standard Zombicide,
Yep.
and then they had Invaders, which was like futuristic space Zombicide, which had 1 or 2 expansions, and then they had the Black Plague, which was D&D final, like fantasy sword and board dragons Zombicide, and then whatever the next one coming out is, they've also
the Marvel one. Yeah. What was the other one?
the Ghostbusters, I think.
They're great. Like they're just amazing.
CMON games. They're very awesome.
Yeah. Another one I played that I really got into was Smash Up. That one, it's a card game, but it's still a board game. It starts off the base set, I think it was 16 decks. And you take the 2 decks and you smash them together. Not physically, obviously. You shuffle them together. And each one is a different faction. So you have aliens and zombies and superheroes and mutants and leprechauns and ghosts and all this kind of stuff. And when you mix them together, you randomly pick your faction as well. You never know what your mixture is. I'm up to 30-some factions now, and I think there are almost like 70 total factions altogether. And since you randomly put them together, the combinations are almost endless. And they have these bases on the table that are random cards as well that have different effects. And you have to try to break the point system. I'm not going to try to explain this game completely because it'll take hours. Your cards are worth stuff, and you have action cards and minion cards. The minion cards go on the table, and they're worth a certain number of points. And you're trying to beat the points on the base to see where you place when it all comes to an end. It's really, the replayability is endless in that game with the number of different combinations you can do. So that's the other thing I'm really into board games is replayability.
Oh yeah, definitely. Replayability is huge, right? Like if you just play it once, what's the point, right? So
well, you remember the games we grew up with, like Sorry and Trouble and Monopoly, and then Risk was the big game that when you sat down and played Risk, you were playing a serious board game. And then they came up with Axis and Allies, which was a great way to kill a weekend. So,
yeah,
but it was a ton of fun. Like it was just Axis and Allies was just one of those first games that I saw the potential of what a board game could be. I was really impressed with that one. And that was about the time I was really getting seriously into Battletech too. So games with more depth to it became really important to me. And then just my collection, I think I've got 60, 70 board games. And some of them I picked up at garage sales. I picked up an arcade board game.
So like you're running an arcade?
No, it's kind of like it's got a little arcade cabinet in the center, and it doesn't actually play any games. It's just a prop. But you're doing things like getting 1-ups and high scores and stuff like that. I played it. It was interesting. One of the games I really want to get is Heroes Quest.
Back from my height, like junior high.
Yeah, they've reprinted it. it's come back out. So I really want to get my hands on one of those. Though a friend of mine found me one, sent me the picture of it, brand new in box, and they're like, "Yeah, the guy wants 150 for it." I'm like, "No, he can keep it. I'll just keep looking at the point." We spent like 120 for Rage of Dracula, so I'm a little bit on the leery side about spending a whole lot more money on board games right now. But yeah, it's on
kind of
my
pretty
to-do
standard
list.
for a lot of the newer games, though,
For
because
sure.
they come with a lot of models now. I'm finding is like Dungeons and Dragons Rage of Acheron or something. It has 20 some odd models in it, and it is a big, heavy box, but it's a game that you get a lot of for the money, but you're paying 120, 150 bucks for it.
Well, I'm not saying it's not worth it. I don't have that kind of cash to throw around with 2 kids, a wife, and all the things that are going on in life with the new expenses, how expensive everything is right now. I just can't justify dumping 150 bucks on a board game. Doesn't mean I don't want to, doesn't mean I'm not going to eventually. I just can't do it right now.
Yeah, some of those bigger board games are pretty expensive, aren't they?
Yeah, and they're worth it though. Like the replayability, the quality of the artwork and on the figurines and stuff like that, and just the board game itself, as well as a lot of the mechanics in the games are really well thought out.
What did you pay for Serenity, Geoff?
I think it was about $100.
I haven't heard of Serenity. What is that?
Firefly.
I was going to ask that if that was, and what kind of game is that? Cooperative?
No, it's so it's it's kind of cooperative, but it's not. Like everybody's independent, but you don't fight against each other type deal. You work on your own, but everybody kind of plays in the same board. And you just run your ship and you go out and do quests and you have goals to make money and fill scenarios and stuff like that. Yeah.
Is everybody flying a little Serenity, or is there different ships?
Yeah, everybody has their own little Firefly. Yeah. There are a couple of different ships with some of the expansions, but
that'd be fun.
That's fun.
That'd be a fun game.
Yeah, I have the main game with the 2 or 3 expansions there are for it. So it's a lot.
You did hear that there was a Battletech board game apparently developed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was like Galactic. You were playing on the Inner Sphere map.
Oh, okay.
I've only heard rumors.
And is it like Risk or something?
Yeah, it's kind of like Risk. I've seen pictures of it on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think it's just one guy who created his own board game. I think I don't even know if it's licensed. I'm not positive. I've heard rumors of it. It looks really cool. If they ever get a licensed version that they sell, I'd probably go pick it up just to give it a try.
Yeah, because the Battletech universe has never had licensing issues.
Well, that's what I mean. And the other thing about it'd be really cool as a way to, like, even if the board game wasn't perfect, it'd be an awesome way to do galactic movement for playing a campaign. Like you actually have a map that you can say, okay, we're this far on a board, and you could move your armies around to kind of do like a galactic level, sphere level war.
Similar to certain things like 40K has that I think you used to be able to where you could do crusades and actually track it and stuff like that. And then
they used to have hex tiles that you could get, and you would be able to play on like a giant 3 foot by 3 foot board and say this army's moving here and this army's moving there.
Yeah, and then you could break it down to smaller games. It's like Flames of War. They had one that's they have a Migration and a Firestorm with Market Garden. Whereas, you have a set map and you like do different, you want to move here and move there, and you then you actually play the tabletop games to determine the outcome of a bunch of stuff. So,
oh, that's cool. That's cool. I've had a huge idea of trying to do something similar for Battletech. I know that you can, and I don't want to. This isn't supposed to be a Battletech episode per se, but the idea.
We're all Battletech episodes. Well, that's where our fan base is.
Yeah. Well, not forever, or potentially, who knows? But the thing is I've always wanted to do a galactic level, and I'm going to call it galactic because it's a section of the galaxy, where you're moving your armies or your units on that scale map, and then you move into, okay, we're in a system, and then you start doing the strategic maneuvers with your warships and your dropships and all that, down to actually invading the planet and then playing it down on the planet. But the amount of record keeping and dedication to doing it is probably bigger than trying to run League. And I've always been really leery about it because the last thing I want to do is get 5-10 guys, guys, gals, whatever, into playing and then have them bail. right? Because the amount of effort and work that would go into it, it would just be like, yeah, no, I'm never playing this game again. Forget, yeah, I'm out.
I
Gotta get the right
laminated.
people.
Yeah, I laminated the 3052 or the clan invasion map,
Yep.
and then we ended up just using like dry erase markers on it
Ooh, good idea.
as people were invading. Because that was the last BT campaign, Mech Warrior type campaign I ran. Was they were clan Goliath Scorpion and came in from the southern part of the hemisphere instead of the north.
Wow, just traveling around the outside would take years to move around the hemisphere.
Basically, they left at the same time the Wolf Dragoons did,
Oh, okay.
and then preemptively invaded to try and defend the inner sphere against the invading clans, but they had to establish themselves as a power to be reckoned with, so people would take them seriously.
Oh, neat.
So they came in the Capellan Confederation.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's been everybody's game plan with Battletech. Anytime they run a campaign where you're like a Mercian or whatever, we'll just crush the Capellans and then use their space.
Well, it was already green, right? So, it worked.
Well, the biggest problem with that is, what would happen if you ever did try to actually take over the Capellan space? You'd end up sitting there one day eating your lunch, and then this green gas would float into your base, and everybody'd fall over dead. Because it's what they do if you're not paying attention.
Yeah, but nobody else would run to their aid either, though, while you're just establishing yourself.
Oh, yeah, you'd have, but the Capellans don't play fair.
Nobody plays fair. Come on.
Not in the long run.
No.
So how about you, Brett? Let's talk about some of the games that you've gotten into. I know Geoff's mentioned a couple of his. I've went on for like 15 minutes for what I like. What about you?
I'm less of a traditional board game player and more of a entry level or a bridge game. So like things that I consider Zombicide. Zombicide, while you do kind of play on a board, it involves a lot of models and it is more miniatures moving around and just rolling a couple of dice. So that's where my niche is. That's what I really like doing.
Not all board games.
Yeah, but most board games,
and rolling dice.
What I would consider a traditional board game is each player has like one piece and you're moving around a board.
Okay, I gotcha. Yep.
Whereas Asheron, it's each player has their D&D figure and you're moving around, but as you're going through the dungeon, there's a whole bunch of monsters spawning and you've got all these other models that are coming on the table.
Gotcha.
Zombicide, you're playing with 4 or 5 people on your team, but there's upwards of 20 or 30 zombie models on the board.
Yep, I gotcha. Yeah, the new style games, not so much the old style.
A bridge. It's kind of halfway between a traditional board game and what I would call a wargaming.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Or a tabletop game.
That's kind of what I moved into too. I just like having traditional board games available to play. Mainly because I like the look of them. I like knowing I have them. There's quite a few I've bought that I've never played.
Yeah, like we've got 2 or 3 different kinds of Risk. Like we've got Transformers Risk, we've got Game of Thrones Risk, we've got the original Risk from when I was a little kid. Just holding up Terraforming Mars for anybody that didn't catch that.
Right on.
So Geoff, talk to us about Terraforming Mars because I'm unfamiliar with that.
It's kind of similar to like a deck builder, but it's not. You have a whole bunch of cards, so it's literally terraforming Mars, right? You start off as a corporation, and then you draw cards and you place tiles on the map of Mars, and whoever terraforms the most to a certain point, you win.
Is it kind of like Settlers of Catan?
Yes and no. So you have different tracks for like oxygen and temperature. So when the temperature reaches a certain point, that's as far as it can go, getting victory points with that. Same with oxygen. And then there's other stuff too that you can add, like you can form the UN on Mars for the most part, and
it's like civilization win conditions.
There's a lot of stuff like that. You have to fulfill all the stuff. Like you have to place all the ocean tiles, all the get the temperature maxed, get the oxygen maxed, and then that ends the game.
Okay.
So
now is everybody working towards that goal, and you're just trying to see who can get there first, or?
You are working towards that goal, yes, but everybody's trying to do it in the way that they score the most points themselves.
Okay. So very similar to Settlers of Catan.
Everybody's out for themselves to win it, right? But
now, Settlers of Catan was this just massively popular game and won awards everywhere. My wife hates that game. with a passion. She finds it boring. And I'm like,
It's on my playlist, but I've never got around to it. And I've never wanted to invest in it in case I didn't like it.
It's an okay game. Well, the thing is, the good thing about the Den is they have a free-to-play.
Do they?
Like you sit down and you just it's the one right beside where the trophy is. There's that bunch of box.
Yeah, the Den has a shelf of board games that you can just come in and sit down and play if you want to.
Yeah, and Settlers of Catan is up there.
And I like. Did you just say that you had a copy?
No, I don't have a copy. Heather just absolutely refuses to play it. Why would I buy it?
Because you would have bought it before she figured out she refused to play it.
No, it was one of the. I'm not a big fan of mostly non-dice games. I like the randomness. Like I like strategic games, but I like the randomness of how a single bad dice roll can just hose you. But Settlers of Catan, I've heard really good things about it. I've played it a couple times. I didn't mind it. I enjoyed it, but I'm not going to buy games that my family just will refuse to play. There's no point.
Makes sense. If you only get to play it with certain people.
That's always been my big issue with board games. Is I'm happy to buy board games. We're probably only going to play it if we like it once or twice a year, and I'd rather invest the money in something that we're going to get more use.
Yep. I am the same way. Like I said, though, I do collect board games that I've hardly ever played or never played. I bought them because I thought they were interesting. Garage sale, $5. How can you go wrong, especially if everything's in it? But yeah,
everything in it.
Yeah, I'm not going to go out of my way to spend a bunch of money on a game that nobody's going to play. What's the point? Which is another reason why Settlers of Catan's never seen our household, and why Monopoly will never be allowed in our household, because I will refuse to play it. So I'm certainly not buying it.
So what you're saying is we need a league day of Monopoly.
Cool. Have fun.
Thanks everybody for showing up. Congratulations. We're not playing Battletech today. Today is Monopoly Day.
Lee is playing Monopoly with us all, and we are ruining friendships.
Yeah, I'll be the next guy who flips a table.
Wouldn't be the first time I've seen a table flipped at a gaming thing.
You weren't.
It's been a long time though.
You weren't there at that tournament, were you?
For that tournament, no.
Okay.
But it's not a unique experience, Lee.
Yeah, no,
it was. Yeah, it's a whole thing, isn't it?
Most everybody has seen a table flipped in anger.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that I've only ever seen it once. I've seen people get upset. I've seen people get up and walk away. I happened to be one of the people that dropped one of my minis off the mezzanine at a certain store that we used to play at, and watched it fall 10 feet and smear all over the ground.
Now, when I saw it, it was because it was a bigger gentleman who was standing up in anger to try and walk away, and didn't realize he was under the table, not sitting at the table.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean when the belt buckle caught it?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was the whole thing. It wasn't even rage. It was just he was trying to get away from the table and got hooked up on it when he stood up. But that was a long time ago. It was before I actually knew you, Brett. So we must have just been at the same tournament. So.
Okay, so we've meandered a little bit. Let's take a minute and just bring it back. Essentially, there's more or less 10 major types of board games. Engine building board games like Settlers of Catan. Deck building board games like Munchkin. Munchkin is actually one of my favorite. I really enjoy that from time to time.
We have a few copies of that here.
Yeah,
you gotta have more than 2 or 3 people, though.
Yeah, the more people you have for some of those games, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Because half the fun is stabbing other people in the back in that game.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's something on the list called a worker placement board game. I'm unfamiliar with those as much.
Isn't that Settlers of Catan?
No. Worker placement is more like Agricola or why can't I think any off the top of my head right now? I play worker placement games. There's a bunch of them. I can't think of games right now. Obviously you draw a blank when you have to actually think about it at the spot.
Yeah, when you're on the spot. Here,
yeah.
Come up with your top 10 games and I can come up with 4. Though I know I have more than that.
Then we go into stuff like co-op board games where you're working together collectively. I really enjoy those because I don't like, if I'm sitting down and just having a game with people, I don't want to be like, ha, you beat me, or ha, I beat you. I want that to be in my actual competitive type games or semi-competitive type games.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's why Zombicide became a staple in our household.
Yeah, because it's cooperative.
Yeah, and everybody contributes. And you can still fail, which is good. And then you see the mechanics that they built in to try to make it a challenge. And really, when it comes right down to it, you can play that game solo.
It has rules for solo play.
Yep. It's a lot of fun.
Feast for Odin and Viticulture are 2 other work placement ones. that I know of.
Did you look those up, or did you pull them out of your memory?
I've played them both, but I looked it up again, and I'm like, because I couldn't remember names. But yes, I've played them both.
Cool. So what else we got? I think we've done 4 or 5 of the
social deduction board games.
Like
Clue or Murder on a Train or whatever it is.
Yeah,
they just made Bullet Train movie out of it.
Corp. C-O-R-P. Corp. I'm trying to remember. I played it just recently. It's basically Who's the Liar or Who's the Spy.
Who done it? Yeah.
They're actually a lot of fun. That one's a lot of fun. A couple of them. It's when you play around the table, somebody is like a rebel. You're all rebels and somebody's a traitor. That's a lot of fun.
I know the game you're talking about. Yeah, I know the game you're talking
about. A friend of mine has it. I just can't remember the name of it, but I thought it was like Core or something like that. Corporation.
Then we've got RPG board games, which is stuff like Asheron's Call and the other D&D type ones, where you're playing D&D, but it's simplified because you're running around on a board, and here's the 3 things your character does, and you don't have to worry about it. Gloomhaven.
Heroes Quest.
Hero Quest, very much.
Yeah.
I've actually got the new Games Workshop one, which was Hero Quest Cursed City, and have never played it. Have never really had anybody to play it with. I've painted up the models, so it's all painted miniatures instead. But I think that's going to be like a 4-night kind of thing. When you play it once, move into the next scenario, play it again, move it like a campaign setting RPG board game.
Mm-hmm. Oh, speaking of games like that, have you guys heard of Mice and Mystics?
Yes.
Oh my God, what a great game. You want to introduce your children to D&D? Mice and Mystics. It's amazing. The story is amazing. The game is tough, so the adults really enjoy it. But it's simplified enough that kids can play it even if they can't read. We played it once because our friend Jason Forbes lent it to us, and we had a really good time playing it the first time. We lost, but it's a cooperative game as well. What an amazingly good game.
That's nice.
Every time I see Mice and Mystics, I just think of Bernard Cornwell's series, the Redwall series.
Okay. I don't know.
Oh, you've never heard of that? Oh,
nope, that's new to me.
You should get your kids going on that. It's maybe when they're a little bit older, because it is like, I'd probably say it's around like Harry Potter level reading type, maybe a little bit more.
Okay, so my middle child could probably play it, but obviously my 6-year-old is.
It's not a board game, right? It's a series of books. Yeah. It's
a book. Sorry.
Games. Yeah. No, it's a series. They put them in the young adult section, I think they are. But yeah, it's all about think Mice and Mystics, right? It's all about the mice. There's think of our world now, but it's all with creatures. So you get your evil creatures, which are stoats and rats, and then you get your big baddies, which are like your what is it, like cougars and wolves and stuff like that. Those are the boss ones type deal, right? And then you have your good side, which are the mice and otters and moles, and badgers are like the kings type deal for.
Okay.
It's really good. It's a really good series, and I have all the books, and I will shamelessly plug them because I think it's a great series.
On that note of books as well, the thing I would really want to get my girls into, and my 5-year-old's actually gotten into it already because we found one, was Choose Your Own Adventure books. And they have a version of Choose Your Own Adventure which is D&D style. And how you roll the dice is you're on page 50 and you're fighting a troll, and you have your longsword that you picked up a couple of pages back. You actually flick the pages like you're rifling through a deck of cards, and what page you stop on has a random number on it, and that's your dice roll.
That's cool.
At the very front of the book is your character sheet. And you actually, with a pencil, mark down your hit points. And this book was like back in the early 80s. And I know you can still get them. Talk about a way to get kids into playing role-playing games or into fantasy. My youngest child is actually, we found one that was a Choose Your Own Adventure based off of nursery rhymes, Little Red Riding Hood, but it mixes in Three Little Pigs, and it mixes in Snow White. It was really cool. And it was really, though she kept going through the same path, she kept trying to make the same decisions, hoping for a different outcome. I'm like, it's a written word, sweetie. It's not going to change. If you keep picking to take the apple, you're going to fall asleep every time. So yeah, it was really fun. Some of those books that's kind of mixing what you were talking about with the Redwall books with gaming, like what we were talking about there, Brett, about board games. What an interesting way to get kids into games.
All right. Well, that sounds all pretty interesting. We were talking about books, and there was one set that Alex liked, and it was Rick Riordan books. Before we move on, Percy Jackson kind of stuff, only not Norse.
Okay, that's cool. And Percy Jackson wasn't Norse; it was Greek.
Or Greek, yeah. So different type pantheon, you know.
Yeah.
There's so many I have trouble keeping track of them.
Yeah, and then when you get into gaming and they have their own, like D&D and different games have their own pantheons. Yeah, it's pretty easy to get things mixed up.
But we're drifting into a different type of gaming.
We're completely moving into something outside of board
related.
games.
That would be a pen and paper game, though.
Yes. Oh, I don't think you were fully done all the different types of games.
No, we're about halfway through the list. The next one up on the list is board games without dice.
That's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I generally avoid those unless they're card games.
Yeah, I would think that is a lot of like card games and stuff like that. I think it's very similar to deck building, but it has its own classification.
Okay.
Roll and move, roll and write are two different ones.
You got to
I'm not sure about roll and write, but like roll and move is your traditional Clue, Monopoly,
Story,
roll a dice, move this many steps.
Makes sense, yeah.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever heard them referred to as that.
Yeah, neither had I until I, started doing a little bit of research and had somebody helping me do a little bit of research on this.
Your Google foo was strong that day.
No, I do not Google well. Roll and write is stuff like Yahtzee.
Okay.
Right, so something we're a little bit familiar with, but not, hey, here's a term for it.
Yeah, the definitions are new. And the thing is, that's actually, those rolls and write games are actually some of my favorites. Though some of them aren't really board games per se, because they don't really come in a box set. You just take 5 dice and 500, or there was one that was, I think it was also called Oh Shit.
I think Cards Against Humanity would probably fall into that category.
Oh, I think
although it would be diceless.
Yeah, it would be diceless, but I think that's almost a category of its own, which is pull cards and groan.
It's not really cooperative, but it is kind of cooperative. But it's a deck builder, but you're not really deck building because you're using your deck to.
Yeah, it's a card game mixed with social experiment, because it's almost, you have to know the person you're playing your cards to, because there's a psychology behind it of what are they looking for, something funny, are they looking for cards that fit in the flow, are they like it's there's a really interesting psychology. But then again, you're not even supposed to be trying to win. It's more of a drinking game than it is a
I played twice.
game.
I played once with some coworkers and my boss, and that was a totally different experience to the other time I played with a bunch of high school kids wanting to play, and they're like, hey, you should join us. I'm like, I don't know, this might be kind of awkward. They're like, yeah, whatever, just join us. It was awkward.
Yeah. I played that game with my 18-year-old daughter and my sister-in-law, my wife, and we had a couple of the cousins there, and then the grandparents were in the room we were on a houseboat, and the looks we were getting from the grandparents, like, what did you just say?
Yeah, everybody was like 17, 18, 19 when we were playing.
Well, that's perfect, because you have the people with the right sense of humor to be able to appreciate that game. It's whether or not you can handle. Yeah, at that point, it's whether can you handle how awkward it can get.
Yeah, because it starts off with like, what can I say that's not going to be like inappropriate? And then it's like, okay, the whole game is about being inappropriate. Yeah, that's kind of out the window. And then it's like,
nothing appropriate.
Where can I push the boundaries that they're actually going to understand and have life concepts and grasps?
So, Cards Against Humanity has come out with Cards Against Disney, Cards Against all sorts, Marvel,
Star Wars, Marvel.
Yeah, they have one called Cards Against Maturity, which is the kids version. Oh my god, the amount of poop jokes that can fit into one box of cards. It's all poop and fart jokes. Oh, Cards Against Canada. That's a good version, the Canadian version. But yeah, it is hilarious. Like we got it for Cameron, and it is not Cards Against Canada or Humanity, but the Cards Against Maturity, and it was so funny. And all she does is giggle the entire time we're playing because we're making poop jokes. So it's actually really good. That's I don't even know what that would fall under. I guess a card game, but it's a very much a social gathering type game where you're not really caring about who wins. It's more about just having a good time.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or who you can make blush first when you're looking at Cards Against Humanity.
So if you had to pick a favorite board game type tabletop or board game type, Lee, what would yours be?
Cooperative.
Okay, or an example. Like if somebody said, "Hey, I'm gonna come over. Let's play a board game." What are you breaking out?
Zombicide.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm doing Zombicide if it's 4 people or less.
Yeah.
Possibly Munchkin if you got like 6 or 7 people.
Yeah. When you're talking about tons of people, usually card games break out best. Also depends on the type of people that are coming. If they're non-gamers, like when you said which game would you pick, I kind of just assumed the people I'm already gaming with. If it's people that I don't know,
you hang out with non-gamers.
Yeah,
you heretic.
Yeah, I know. But I will. If I was just pulling out games that I play with people I play games with, it would be Zombicide. If I was trying to show people new games, it would be a card game like Rummy or Crib, or to go with some more newer ones. There's like Crib Wars or Cross Crib, stuff like that. But yeah, that's people that are just more traditional gamers, the like card gamers.
All right, Geoff, we're coming out to your place.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're coming out to your place for a barbecue. What are you putting on the table?
Steak.
Okay, I'm sold. I'll play that game.
Yeah. Well, you said you're coming out for a barbecue, right? Yeah. Board game wise, I don't know. I'd probably break out like Terraforming Mars or Firefly, something like that. I don't really have any like beginner friendly games. I guess Power Grid is probably the most beginner friendly game I have. And that's pretty much like a deck build. Well, not really a deck builder, but a progression building game, I suppose, for the most part. Whoever can power the most cities and stuff.
That's cool. You have to show us that one, because I think Heather would like that.
Yeah, but it's good. It's interesting. You know, I've played that quite a few times before. But yeah, if it's people that know how to play games, probably Terraforming Mars or Firefly, depending on how much time we got.
Firefly sounds really interesting. That
it's
one
fun.
I'd like to check out.
It's fun. Yeah.
And Brett, what would you put to the table?
Yeah, like Zombicide is usually my go-to because it's quick, easy, it's fun. You can have a game in 20 minutes, or you can have a game that lasts an hour and 20 minutes, depending on how things are going. So you might end up getting to play 2 or 3 times, or you might just play once.
Yeah, depending upon the scenario that you're playing in. It's actually a relatively good beginner's game too, because it's cooperative. Everybody can help you learn how to play the game.
Yeah, nobody's trying to beat anybody at the table. You're just like, we as a group are trying to accomplish mission X, and this is how we're going to go about it.
And the rules of Zombicide aren't that complicated.
No, really, you take like 3 minutes to read the proof or the scenario, and you're good to go.
And what I like is all the special abilities of your particular character they're all together on one page usually. Right, so all you have to do is know the name of it. You look it up alphabetically, and that's what this ability does. So I really like that.
Yeah, especially if you're playing a couple of the base characters or like base expansion characters. The only really complicated stuff is some of the like specialty character packs stuff.
I found a completely OP character, which I bet you everybody who's ever played Zombicide knows this one. If you've done any expansions,
I love me Rao.
Oh, Raoul? The priest. Is that the priest?
Nope, it is. Not the cop, but the like SWAT officer. He can swap out his gear from anywhere he wants to, whenever he wants to.
Oh, so he's basically got the combat webbing.
Yeah, he's got the combat webbing. So he just, instead of his backpack, he pulls it out and he has whatever in his hands he needs at the time.
The priest, however, has super strength to begin with. So any melee weapon in his hands is a 3 damage weapon.
Oh, that would be so awesome.
Yeah, so if you get a pair of hammers, which you can dual wield, you just
swing in 3 damage.
Yeah, and you're slaughtering everything. It doesn't matter if it's fatties, it doesn't matter if it's runners, it doesn't matter if it's the abomination. You just drop them. The only time that it would be a problem is if you're playing the toxic ones that spew out damage if you kill them with melee weapons.
Yeah.
So he's so overpowered. Oh, and he can heal. He's so overpowered. Anytime we've used him, I almost have to retire him because anytime we've used it, because we just have the basic set with some expansion, it's just a slaughter with him. And then you get the girl with the dual wield that has the ability to choose her turn. No, she has the ability to shoot. She can shoot into melee and not hit the players.
Mm-hmm. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, point blank or whatever, or whatever it is. She's brutal too. We had one person with dual Uzis and the priest with 2 hammers, and it didn't matter what you put up against them, they were dead. They just walked through a horde of zombies and it was over. So that's the only problem with a lot of the expansions is you have to kind of play test them so you can find out
the characters are meant to be played in that specific expansion.
Yeah, and the special guest stars, they don't actually tell you which expansion they're to go to. They're just guest stars. I want the clown. I really want the clown. I want
to get the dogs.
Yeah, the dogs are pretty cool too. Now,
I've seen it. I've wanted to buy it. It went out of stock before I could get it.
Is that the guest? Are they guest stars or are they? I
don't know anything about them. All I know is that they have dogs for it.
I know there's zombie dogs.
Yeah.
I don't know if they like take up a slot on your character card and they just count as like a weapon or a compatriot or a companion or what, but
or whether they're their own character.
Yeah. Or whether they're their own character, right? You play as the dog.
Every time we've tried to play Zombicide, that we also try to play it straight, like pure, never flipping over to the half zombie version or the superpowered version.
Yeah, I've never played that.
Yeah, apparently that's what you're supposed to do. If you die, you're supposed to come back basically as a 1-up, and you're the half zombie, which their powers are kind of seem OP a little bit, but I've never tried them, so I really don't know how successful you are with them.
Okay, so that pretty much takes us to the hour-ish mark. Do we want to call it here, or do we want to start talking about tabletop gaming?
No, let's move it on to the next show. I know people are going to be interested in. Maybe some people can give some suggestions on what is the next one going to be, kind of like pen and paper?
No, like tabletop war games. What you would consider a tabletop game or a war gaming.
Yeah, so anybody listening, put in the comments what kind of war games you're into. Maybe we'll do a little research and talk about it on the air and see what they are, because there's so many of them. And I've got a ton of stories about some games like Sea Krieg and stuff like that I want to talk about, because that's such a ridiculous pen and paper game.
Yeah, this was going to be a multi-part segment. I just wasn't sure if it was going to be a 2-part or a 3-part, because the 3rd part will be video gaming.
Yeah. So yeah, this has been really good. Thanks for bringing up this topic, Brett.
Did you even finish your list of all the different board games?
No, I think we're still missing 1 or 2.
Comfort board game is the last one off the list for number 10.
Comfort board game? What on earth is that?
What about grand strategy board games? Or
what's a grand strategy, like Risk?
Well, yeah, Risk or Axis and Allies would be considered one of the grand strategies.
Or whatever the heck that game is that you play that takes months.
Twilight. There's like Twilight Imperium would be another grand strategy game.
Yep.
The one I play, World in Flames. Yeah, only crazy people play that. That's one of those nice counter games that has far too many counters involved in. Yes,
I'm pretty sure Knights of the Dinner Table makes fun of that one at least 2 or 3 times a year in their episodes of comics.
It looks like comfort board gaming is stuff that is extra family friendly.
Oh, okay.
I would just say comfort board gaming would be any board game we want to play at the time.
Pretty much, right?
Yeah, isn't we board game for comfort, or we do
it? Sit down and have a family board game evening. That's kind of a comfort night.
And the problem is that's why we don't play Monopoly. It goes from comfort board game to I am going to crush you and I am going to make you cry before the end of the game. So, and that's every competitive game, isn't it?
You don't have any money left. I guess you better start using your allowance.
Yeah.
We'll let you buy
3 hotels
money with real.
Yeah. No wonder your son still lives with you.
Lost 1 game of Risk, paying for it forever.
Yep. He had to take out a loan from his dad to pay his dad back at really good interest rates. Hey everybody, we've finally gotten to the stage of the episode that I think everybody's been waiting for. It is the draw bin. Hopefully everybody can see this on the screen because we've had multiple problems trying to get this to show up. We have our Wheel of Fortune, and we are going to get this recorded showing everybody who wins. We had 96 entries with 32 people commenting over multiple videos. So that is amazing. Thank you so much for the participation. Brett, give us the 3, 2, 1 countdown, and I'll hit the spin button.
All right, with much ado, let's spin that wheel. 3, 2, 1. Push the button, push the button.
Congratulations, Battle Basement. You have won the Merrick Lance in that beautiful purple paint scheme. Please get a hold of us at the Calgary Battletech League at gmail.com to give us your contact information so we can get a hold of you. If you are in Western Canada, you will get it sent to you for free. If you're outside of Western Canada, we will throw in the first $20 Canadian for the shipping and handling. Or if you choose, we can pass it on to another person where we'll do this draw all over again. But otherwise, thank you so much for participating, everybody, and I look forward to the next draw. I know Geoff and Brett feel the same. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, and thanks everybody for all your participation and joining us for another exciting episode. All right, everybody. So we rambled a little bit because that's what our show is. Thanks for coming out. We enjoyed it. It's a little bit different topic, but we're gamers. When it comes down to things, just because you play one game, chances are there's going to be other things that will be of interest to you, and maybe you're unfamiliar with it. So how do you get exposed to other things like this? Well, we're here to help you with that. So thanks for coming on this board game tour. We'll see you again when we do tabletop gaming, and we'll see you again when we do video gaming.
Bye. Good night.
Have a good night, folks. Thanks for joining us.